Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Read to Inspire podcast. My name is Sibongiseni Mgolozeli, the host. Our Read to Inspire podcast is dedicated to every young mind and old mind who is still passionate about reading. We have a mission, a vision, and some values that we operate by. First and foremost, our mission is to promote the reading culture within the African continent and beyond, with the vision to see each and every African home with a bookshelf. And as long as that bookshelf is bigger than your television screen, we are happy. Talking about our values, they are all summarized in the acronym called ART. A for arise, R for read, and T for transform. So we do hope that on a daily basis, you wake up for arise, and you read whatever genre of any book that you love, and then you will be transformed inwardly. And as you are transformed, you will then be inspired to transform others. In other words, be the change you want to see. It starts with you. That's a real transformation right there. So today we have a very beautiful author who will be inspiring us by sharing or even reviewing her own book, but I will not be introducing her per se. I will allow the author to basically tell us more about herself. What I want to do for now is to just tell you about the book briefly based on what I've read, especially at the back of the book, which is something exciting. You will pick for yourself that there's still more books coming from the author. So the title of the book is called The Beautiful Anthology by Buhle Skosana. This is a first collection of essays and poems from one of Africa's most exciting emerging talents. It is rare to come across a young woman so in touch with her emotions, but the author manages to share her life experiences with the reader in such a way that there is an immediate connection. I felt that connection. From pain of abuse to the sadness of unrequited love and the unremitting devotion to her mother, her audience can relate to every feeling expressed and share in the anger and the resolve. Africa can be proud of this rising star, and there's no doubt that there will be writings for the world stage very soon. That is what I meant by saying there's still more books coming. So with that being said, let me allow our guest speaker, Buhle Skosana, to come on stage and tell us more about herself and the book, of course. Hi, Buhle. Welcome to the Read to Inspire podcast.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me, Mr. Mgolozeli. I'm very excited to talk about myself and my book. So my name is Buhle Skosana. I'm a 21-year-old from Pretoria. And I'm an author, a musician, as well as a student at the University of Pretoria. And I'm currently studying for the degree BCom Informatics. In terms of the book, because you also asked about the book, a quick way to summarize it, the way I always do, is that I describe it as taking the reader on a journey, using the poetry and short stories to basically mimic or describe what people go through as they grow up or as they grow in this world. So there's 4 different phases that happen in the book. The first one is called Buying Brilliance, and it's about basically coming into the world and not knowing anything, being innocent and naive. And then second phase being that you get hurt, and these are the things that help you realize that life is not as what can I say, roses and peaches as you thought it was when you were younger.
Yeah.
Then the third phase being how you heal from it, and this is actually where you grow the most, because you've experienced something bad or something that made you realize that there are good people and there are bad people in the world, and you have learned from it.
Yeah.
And phase 4 is basically just using that knowledge that you've gained positively. So
Lovely.
that's it. Summarization.
I love the summary because, good storytellers apparently they tease you before they tell you. Obviously, we'll talk about your book in details. That was just a tease. The listeners will get to hear more about the book. We'll talk about each phase and hopefully we'll get to all of them if time allows. But okay, now that before we get to the phase, there's an introduction where you talk
Yes.
about the chapter, is there such a thing as wisdom wounds? How would you tell us in the combination of these two terms, wisdom wound, and also what is your answer to the question you're asking, is there such a thing as wisdom wound? You can say yes or no, and then tell us more.
Okay, so definitely, yes, I do believe that there is such a thing as wisdom wounds. And as you read on in the book, you'll also realize that you'll come to that realization. And then just to separate the two words, let me try to describe wisdom on its own. I think, simply put, wisdom is like the practical use of knowledge, because someone can have knowledge, but then they don't know how to use it in the real world.
Yeah.
People who have knowledge, that's why I put the distinction between people who have knowledge and people who have wisdom, because you can have knowledge, like you have all the information in your head, but you have no way to practically utilize it. So that's why I say wisdom is more, and it comes with experience over time. That's why older people have more wisdom than younger people, because they've been through more, essentially. It's more of an action-based knowledge acquiring knowledge acquiring method, because you have to actually be in situations where you grasp information.
I guess in a sense that we tend to gain wisdom based on the experiences we go through as we grow up, which is then why the term wounds come into play, because in most cases we learn the most from those experiences that leaves us with scars, and then those wounds, we turn them into wisdom. And I see there are different quotes that we use there to expound on this concept. What doesn't kill you make you stronger. Do you want to expound on that quote by Kelly Clarkson?
So essentially I used it because I like the song. It's a very nice song. So, but also when you think about it, it's very true, because when you are growing and you're gaining these wisdom wounds, as we've mentioned, it can feel painful. It can feel you can feel hopeless at a certain point, but you must remember, on the brighter side of things, this actually didn't kill you. You weren't destroyed by this. If you have a positive outlook, you can actually grow from that situation and help others who are struggling to go through what you've went through. So yeah, that's why I used that quote.
Great. And I love the analogy of a bicycle, as you're saying, when you're growing up, learning how to do things. Let's say you fell on a bicycle and you had those wounds, maybe you scratched yourself. So there's always, you also mentioned in the book, you have a choice to look on the positive as well as on the negative with any kind of situation. But with that analogy of like physical pain, you also divert it or relate it in a more of an emotional pain. For me, as I'm just analyzing the book on its own, I feel like you've been writing for a very long time, because you said you are 21, you're still young, yet you write with so much wisdom. It's like you have been through a lot and you're speaking from experience. Can you maybe expound or even inspire people who are going through a lot in terms of love, and maybe how can they turn those wounds they are currently nursing for now, and what can they do to turn them into wisdom?
So obviously I'm not like the best person to come to in terms of advice with this, because I'm quite young. I know some people are like, what has she been through, at her age? But I'd say that time can heal a lot. I think if you give yourself time, if you've went through something traumatic in terms of love, I would say take out some time to learn about yourself all over again, or fall in love with yourself again. I'd say that's the first thing to do, because as we get into relationships, we have to always think about the partner that we're with, and sometimes we even forget or neglect our own needs, because love is quite selfless if it's true. So I would say take out some time to find out, maybe you like new things now, being this person outside of this relationship, or maybe you don't like certain things anymore. Also, I would say that another thing that you could do is to write down your experience, and write down what you've learned, what you liked and what you didn't like, and what you would want in a partner in future, so that you're able to not just go into the next relationship blindly, but you're able to really be sure about your situation the next time that you decide to try again. So yes, that's the advice that I would give.
I love the fact that you also mentioned the point of writing down how you're feeling. And for me personally, I feel like that's one of the best therapeutic things you can do for yourself in order to heal. So I love that part. Okay, thank you for sharing that. Now let's move to the first phase of your book, which is Buying Brilliance. You started so well. It's a very interesting, short and sweet poem. But what, since we're also talking about broken, wounds and wisdom and so forth, I want us to start with your second poem titled The Broken Mirror. They are objects that we are advised to always use if we want to grow. For instance, I think generally people, they love to use a magnifying glass. Basically, with the magnifying glass, it's more like that analogy is for people who love to analyze or even judge other people. They say, look at you. And when they see faults in someone else, the magnifying glass is going to basically magnify those faults or problems they see in others. But with a mirror, it's more like you see yourself and how broken you are if you are broken. Instead of using a magnifying glass, I love the fact that you use a broken mirror as some kind of a reflection for yourself. Why did you decide with that first poem, A Broken Mirror, and what does it mean to you?
Okay, so I just want to, a side note, this is why I love literature so much, because you were explaining how you perceived reading this short story, The Broken Mirror, and you referred it to the magnifying glass. So it's very funny how, and it's very interesting how that's how you perceived it, because in terms of why I chose A Broken Mirror, is because in the story, it's also a way for the person to self-reflect, but it's also showing how at the end I say that the broken mirror is maybe deemed bad luck, because this is showing us how broken we all are inside, and how we all try to hide parts of ourselves to the public, those ugly parts that we don't want people to see. So that's and the reason why I chose this poem to be at the beginning is because I wanted the beginning to be thought-provoking. I wanted to also entice the reader, because I'm not really such a big author, of course. So when they start reading and they're like, okay, so what is this phase about exactly? When they read this story, then they can grasp that, okay, so it's about reflection. It's about sort of like gaining intellect or gaining information from others and from like yourself as well. So that's why I placed it in the beginning. And that's basically why I used the mirror as well.
Lovely. Can I read the last few lines of this poem because they basically echo what you just explained to us?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I'll start. It says, before jumping, I looked into a broken mirror and realized why it is such bad luck. It slaps us with the realization of our inner savageness. It reminds us of our inability to truly love others because we clearly do not love parts of ourselves. So I guess that's the reflection we're talking about. You want it to be thought-provoking, and it really did. You achieved that goal, in my opinion. So thank you for that. And then the next poem speaks about successful manipulation. In the context of this poem, I still get the sense that, okay, this was all about love. So maybe they became successful in winning your love instead of using inspiration or maybe pure or clear intentions, but there was manipulation involved. Can you maybe expound on that poem a bit for us?
Okay. So this is actually one of my favorite poems that I've ever written.
Okay.
So yes, I actually wanted to create an oxymoron with the title. Because obviously success, it's like tied to positivity and you'd see it in a positive light. And obviously manipulation is very negative and there's bad intentions when someone is manipulating you most of the time. Obviously there's cases where someone is manipulating you negligently. They can't even tell that they are manipulating you, but most of the time it's for bad intentions. So this poem, I wrote it when I was in a very bad space in my life. And it goes back to you saying that writing things down actually helps dealing with emotions. So that's what I did with this poem. Right. And you are right in terms of it being about romance. But I think also it's quite scary. Okay, I'm going off track a bit, but I think this is important to say. This poem, I wrote it obviously when I was not in a good space, but I didn't have a specific topic that, okay, I'm going to write about love per se, but I just wanted to write down my emotions. So it was like intuitive writing, if you can, I call it that. So just writing and jotting down and then sort of like fixing the structure afterwards. And then later on, when my best friend read this poem, she said that this actually relates directly to what someone close to her went through. Because the last part, she took it as someone being like physically abused. So she was like, did you write it for her? And I was like, no, I just wrote it for myself. Just so it's crazy because it can be taken in that way, that the abuse was first verbal and then it became physical. But the way I had written it essentially was I wanted it to be in such a way that the scars, they were so bad internally that I started not treating myself well externally, which is why I said that you left your work of art, because I was not able to hide that I was in pain anymore, if that makes sense.
It does, definitely. In between, there's like Buhle's note, which is basically where you're sharing your views about happiness. There are people who basically believes that in order for you to be successful, or maybe to be happy, you need to define happiness in your own. Do you have your own definition of happiness, and what do you mean by saying unsick happiness?
I think, how do I define happiness? Okay, so I think it's closely linked to contentment.
Yeah.
Because with happiness, obviously it comes and goes. There's no way that you are happy throughout your life because things happen and then a different emotion comes into play. But I think that if you are able to be content for the majority of your life, then I would say that's very close to experiencing a more permanent kind of happiness, I would say.
Yeah.
Because like life is good, there are better things that could happen, but because you're content, life is quite okay for you. Like you feel happy. I'd say obviously another cliche thing I could say is happiness is seeing those that I love around me happy. That makes me happy. So that's another way that I can put it. And then what I meant here with Buhle's note is that I forgot what the name of what I want to describe is called. I think it's called the paradox complex or something like that. But essentially it means that certain things that you chase, it's harder for you to receive them because you're constantly like chasing after them. So that's what I meant with you shouldn't chase for love. You shouldn't you shouldn't chase for happiness. Rather just be content in your space. Make sure that you're doing the work within you, and then it will find you.
Yeah.
That's what I meant by that phrase.
That's lovely because of what we're talking even here, because it's part of that note to say love and happiness are two powerful aspects of life that should happen naturally. So now when you try to seek these things, basically they should be a byproduct. So you just do the things that you love. Then when you finish those things that you, especially if you do them to the best of your abilities and you are happy with the outcomes, then the feeling of love or the feeling of success or the feeling of happiness, it becomes a byproduct of that. You are not chasing them, you are doing the things that you love. What you get eventually is basically the feeling of happiness or the feeling of love or the feeling of success. So thank you for sharing your thoughts in that. Next poem is called In and Out, that caught my attention. And I want to read a stanza that I think made me reflect. I think you did a good job there to make these poems thought-provoking. Maybe you'll tell us what is the poem about and maybe what we're trying to accomplish by this particular stanza that I'm about to read. It says, I think it will help me to let go, but then I reconsider, for nobody can deal with me like you did. I opened up with more than I could ever, but still I am not treated like treasure. That is very deep in my opinion, and it feels like you are writing it specifically to someone you love, if I'm right.
Yes.
Okay, tell us more.
Okay, so this is one of my, it's not a recent poem. I've written more recent, but in terms of in the book, this is one of the most recent poems. I think I wrote it 2021, if I'm not mistaken. End of 2020, somewhere in 2021, around that time. And I was going through a breakup, so you are right. I did write it about someone that I cared about a lot. In terms of that particular stanza, I think the line where I said, for nobody can deal with me like you ever did, that particular person actually, when we had one of our last arguments, like our big arguments, they actually said something similar to me. So I kind of like used it in the poem because they said something along the lines of, no one can deal with you like I deal with you. No one will be able to put up with you like I can. Basically, essentially, obviously they did it in a way to cause me pain, but I used it in the poem in a way to sort of like put the love on a pedestal. So it's funny because it was used in two different lights. because obviously I was still hurt. So I thought of it in that way. I thought, yes, this person is right, actually. I won't be able to find love like that ever again. So yes, basically, I was just having this conversation with myself and my thoughts when I was writing it down. So yeah.
Oh, right. Also, the third stanza was I mean, not the third, but the final stanza in that poem convinced me that actually this is indeed a breakup poem, because I also want to read that part. You say, "So I write this with a heavy heart, with a potato the size of watermelon filling my throat. I don't know how to let go. I no longer know what to do, for I need this love to go on, yet you no longer do." It's one of those moments where you feel like, no, I've done my best, and maybe on my side, I'm trying to put in all the efforts. But for the relationship to work, you need both parties to be working together. When the other side or the other party is like no longer interested, there's nothing you can do, but you just need to let go of everything and move on with your life. Okay, thank you for sharing that. But now I think we've come to the end of the first phase. I love how you actually, even the way you titled the second phase being called being unconsolable. So you make it sound like you never just passed the first phase whereby you went through all these breakups or all this kind of stuff. Now the second phase, it gives an impression that okay, after all I've been through, there's nothing that can be done to basically heal me. So this is the thought that you wanted your readers to have in mind as they are reading the second phase.
Or basically I put this phase here and I also titled it that way because I wanted it to be like you experiencing it in current time, because obviously when you're hurt, especially at the beginning of healing, you feel like this is not going to get better. Essentially, you just feel like this is the end. I'm always going to feel this way and nothing is going to help me. So that's why I wanted to make it as realistic as possible, like the reader is basically experiencing with me my emotions. Yeah, they're experiencing it with me in real time. So that's why I titled it that also.
Lovely. Okay, there was the first poem in the second phase. It calls The Heart's Torment. But I won't basically go through that poem. I don't want us to talk about that because in the healing journey, I believe, you need to start with what you did in the second poem, which is called Friendship Circle. You basically talk about these kind of vices as if they are some kind of best friends. You say, I'm always with my best friends. And then you read about these best friends, you actually reveal who they are towards the end of each paragraph, so to speak. The first one is speaking about insecurity. The second one is speaking about anxiety. The third one about depression. What was the goal behind such a writing, or what inspired you to write? Okay, I know in the beginning you spoke about the importance of self-reflection when you're experiencing pains from wounds and something. Is there a correlation between what you wrote before and this kind of poem?
Yes, I think there is a correlation between the two. And also, I wanted to sort of exaggerate the title for this phase also, because obviously, if you are feeling unconsolable, you basically have no one around you but you. And if you are experiencing pain, then and you're spending more and more time with yourself, then these things can pop up, these feelings of depression and insecurity and anxiety. So I wrote it also to maybe help others who are experiencing the same thing, maybe help them like articulate their words for them or something along those lines.
My thought was initially, when you are unconsolable and at the same time you are basically referring to depression, anxiety, and insecurity as your best friends, would that be maybe a lead for you to be unconsolable because you have surrounded yourself, your circle of best friends is basically negative people? Was that maybe the cause for you to be unconsolable? Do you think that's the reason most people are unconsolable, because they befriend these kinds of friends in their lives?
Yes. So I think that definitely if you don't tell anyone and you keep this all inside, it's very dangerous because that can lead you in a deeper hole that you won't be able to come out of. I think that it would be better to deal with someone there to help you, whether it be like family or a therapist or anyone that is willing and able to assist you.
So that's exactly what I thought in terms of after reading that poem. That's the message you're trying to portray out there. The beautiful thing about poems is this: you don't necessarily get the full spectrum, but you actually, it's more like a therapist. The therapist, when you go for therapy, they actually want the answers to come from you. So, but then they are guiding you to get there. They show you the two sides of the coin, the negative and the positive. And what you did with this poem, you're basically saying, okay, when you look at the negative, you are always paying attention to your thoughts, befriend these thoughts, the depression and anxiety or whatever, you won't be consolable. But if you surround yourself with the good people or the people who are positive, who are generally happy, then eventually all these things that you're trying to accomplish, to be in a good space, to have greater thoughts, you know what to do. You've shown the negative side of being on the negative side, as well as the positive side of being on the positive side. This basically comes in the form of the reader or someone who's reading your book and what they need to think for themselves. That's what I meant by saying, okay, it feels like a therapist giving you advice on how to live a good life. So thank you so much for that. I think that brings us to the last part, or basically the end of phase two. Phase three is interesting because it's all about healing. And I like the fact that, because I think you're a great storyteller, so to say, and also in terms of how you position each and every poem, it's relatable. It's more like great storytellers, they use the acronym ART in terms of grabbing the attention of their listeners or their readers. For instance, the word ART stands for adversity, the acronym ART, adversity, R for resolution, coming up with a solution, and then the T stands for take home message. So in the first phase, we were speaking about adversity, basically all the negative things, what we go through, and we get these wounds, and then eventually we gain wisdom from those experiences that scarred us. And then now, phase two, we're more of speaking about what to do, the solutions. You know the problem. What steps do you need to do in order to overcome those adversities? And then as part of that, maybe even healing is also part of resolutions. You need that solution. If you have going through depression or anxiety or whatever, you need to find solution because those are basically problematic. Let's speak more about healing. Now, what is, maybe in layman's term, what because I know you just said if you're going through depression, seek professional help, go through therapy. You also mentioned the importance of writing down your thoughts. For someone who's not a writer, or maybe someone who can't have access to professional help, therapy, what are the other ways of, getting themselves to feel better or to avoid depression, anxiety, or even insecurities? What are practical terms that you have also experienced or you've had that normally helps someone who's going through a lot?
Okay. So I'd say besides writing down and besides professional help, I would say definitely having at least one person that you can go to basically discuss your thoughts, basically go through how you're feeling, someone that you can go to no matter the situation, someone who's really there for you. I would also say something that's quite important for me would be, I don't know if the person is religious, but I'd say praying is definitely something that has also helped me quite a lot, because talking to God, it just kind of changes your mood completely. You just feel like you can carry the load of the day after that session. I'd also say maybe another tip would be to maybe write down affirmations that the person can say to themselves each time that they wake up, that I'm worthy, I'm worth it, today is going to be a good day, I can do all things, through Christ who gives me strength. I don't know, I'm using religious terms because I'm religious, but you can use any kind of affirmations. And you'll just, because through saying things, like the power of the tongue is so powerful. Through you saying these things, through you even seeing them, you'll just see the change start happening in your life, slowly but surely. Yeah, I think those are the main tips that you can use to start off helping yourself.
I 100% agree with that. Thank you for sharing. And you just reminded me when you shared your religious beliefs. I am spiritual, so I also do some of those things. First and foremost, I think that's also important to reach out to someone that you trust, having to speak, because speaking is therapeutic. You don't have to go to a professional, but someone you trust. This could be a family member, your sibling or your parent, whatever. When you speak to someone, they listen to you and then they will advise accordingly. Because when you bottle things up to yourself, they will eat you up and even damage you even beyond repair, if I can put it that way. So thank you for sharing your thoughts. When it comes to what you shared in terms of, prayer and other faith activities that you can do, you reminded me of a sermon that I watched recently, and it's actually fit into our conversation right now. The title of the message was Words, Wind versus Words. So this was a message by Pastor Stephen Ferrick of Elevation Church. He was actually comparing the power of what you focus on. So for instance, we all have a natural tendency, it's human nature, to be always paying attention to the negative things instead of focusing on the most important thing, which is the word of God. So the wind there, he was basically using the analogy of the story of Peter in the Bible when Jesus walked on water and Peter asked, if I can come, if it's you, Lord, please confirm so that I can come towards you. And then there was a raging storm, obviously. So he started a few steps walking on the water, but as soon as he heard the wind, he focused on the wind and then he drowned. But the lesson in that message, the pastor was saying, when you focus on the negative, you are bound to be overwhelmed by the negative. But you focus on the word, which is paying attention to what Jesus was saying and also paying attention to him, because he's the helper, is everything that we need. If you focus on Jesus, though the storms will be there, nothing will happen to you because you know the promises of God in the Bible. I'll always be with you. I'll never forsake you. I'll never leave you. Take courage. I'm with you the way. So I think you just reminded me by that advice. So thank you so much. And I think also now we've come to the second part, which is healing. So in a nutshell, you need to use those different strategies you're going through the most. Know the affirmations, speak to the right person, go through therapy, write down your thoughts. All those things will eventually help you become, or basically to heal. Fourth thing, learned power. Now this is where it gets to the top of the cream. I love it because when we hear about learned power, it basically means power is not just something it gets bestowed on you. It's something that you can learn and become powerful. And there's maybe as the foundation. It starts with those affirmations that you've mentioned as part of your healing journey. Can you tell us maybe in your, and maybe the reason why you titled that phase Learn Power, what was the intention, or what were you trying to teach your readers by saying power can be learned?
Okay, so the intention with me titling it Learned Power is that I wanted people who have went through something.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to sort of remind them, you could call it maybe an affirmation of sorts. I wanted to remind them that there is this phase where you can get to this level, you can get to this point where you are you can stand strong. Almost sort of like when you've been like climbing a mountain and now you're at the peak and you're looking out into the view. That's basically this point. So yeah, that was my purpose for that.
I get it. I get it. And then now the first poem, it's more like everything was about power in this whole entire phase. You speak about the African woman. We know how powerful they are, and the praises you're basically doing to such an extent that because I've seen you like live and what you are describing here, especially with in terms of the physical appearance, you speak about a very melanated woman who's like voluptuous and all those things. So it's more like you're praising someone. And then I got to think in my mind, could you be talking about your mother? Is there someone in specific in mind who is this brilliant, who has got all these features, who has got this brilliant mind as well? Or maybe we're just writing in general about African women, or there's someone that you admire and you're praising with all these beautiful words in the poem. What was in your mind when you wrote this poem? Very powerful poem, I must say.
Thank you very much. Okay, obviously the top person is definitely my mom. She was the first person that I thought of. But also I wrote it also for all the women in my life, basically, who raised me, because I see them as very powerful. All the women who put in effort into making me who I am. Very grateful for them. Yeah. But I also wanted to add it into the anthology because I feel like I wanted to remind Black women how powerful they actually are. They're known to like deal with adversity and to hold it on their shoulders like there's nothing. So I definitely admire Black women 100%. I also just wanted to show that admiration. So that's why I wrote the poem. That's why it's in as well.
Wow. Okay, great. And then the second one, it's interesting because you use an emoji to title the poem, like the fist, to show power. Think about powerful things here. And then also love next to that fist. Can I maybe read just the first stanza? Her brown eyes, her dark skin, her eyes spewed power from deep within. So it just shows to me that's first part, even though these features are actually noticeable on the outside, but the real power now comes from deep within. Was that the message you're trying to convey?
Definitely. I wanted to show that, okay, this is what you're seeing on the outside, but inside there's even more going on. There's even more power within or beauty within as well. Yes, that was the main point.
I love the fact that you also said beauty also comes from within, because it's basically very true. If you feel beautiful from the inside, if you feel happy from the inside, if you feel successful from the inside, what I've noticed with outward appearance, even your countenance, your face, when you are happy from within, people will tell you, look at you, you're glowing. Or when you from within that I feel beautiful, you've done all those affirmations, people will be inspired, to kind of try and practice what we're talking about in this conversation. If they are going through a lot, it will definitely help them to feel powerful, even themselves at the end of the day. Now, the last phase, euphoric acceptance. So I was thinking to myself, the word euphoric, first of all, is describe the feeling of, great excitement or something like that. Do you mean then that euphoric acceptance, do you need to accept yourself no matter how broken you are, before you can have those elevated feelings of joys and happiness, whatever. What was the reason behind the title of that phase?
So I titled it that way, mainly because when we are feeling happy, when we're going through something positive, we tend to ask ourselves, oh, when is this ending? This is like something bad is going to happen or something like that. We don't really live in the moment, I'd say. So I wanted to title it that because at this phase, at this point, the writer is going through something great. The writer is experiencing euphoria, essentially happiness on an elevated level. They are quite content with their life at this point, and they've accepted that this is a phase that I'm in now, and I'm happy to be in this phase. I'm not asking questions about when is it ending, but rather that's why I titled it that.
Oh, lovely. And the first poem there just summarizes everything you also mentioned about beauty, especially acceptance, the acceptance part. You say, the freckles under my eyes and the dimples that deploy themselves in my cheeks make me who I am. There's no other way. I cannot even expand on that. It's as clear as crystal. It's basically all about acceptance. All your flaws, if you accept them as they are, they make you who you are. And then it means you are content with how you look. So that is very powerful in my opinion. So thank you for that. It made a whole lot of impression on me. Also in my reflection as well in terms of what I've been through before. I think you accomplished your goal of having to encourage or maybe to make your reader or to make this book to be thought-provoking, because I had a lot of thoughts in my mind and also things that I need to be avoiding from now moving onwards. And to an extent that you gave me an impression in the last part that, okay, even though love had to take you through those different emotions, but now in the last part, you make me feel like you believe, especially with the poem entitled Unavoidable. Also have this hope that when the time is right, maybe when God is willing, the right person who has all these attributes that you are looking for in the person, they will have. Can you tell me what inspired now this poem after all you've been through? Is it because you worked on yourself and so forth? Please elaborate.
Okay, so I'm a person who it's going to the paradox complex thing that I was talking about before, where I was avoiding love, and then that's when love comes knocking on my door. So I was kind of like putting this poem forward to just say that if love comes knocking again, don't shy away from it. If it really feels right, you should take the chance. Don't be scared because of past experiences or how a situation ended, but rather just go into it. Love needs you to be all willing. You can't put like one foot in and one foot out. You have to be like all in. So that's why I added this poem at the end, definitely.
I love, what a beautiful way to end the podcast or the episode. I enjoy that part. You started off in a very shaky way, but we ended up with someone who's very, very positive, who believes in beautiful things in the world, some of them being love. So thank you so much. That actually was my last question referring to the book. I usually ask my guests at the end of the podcast, maybe one or two books that have made a very good impression on you. Obviously, as an author, you said in the book that you loved reading even from the early age. Maybe just at the top two, find what book titles, just the name and the author of those books that have made it.
I like a lot of poetry books. A book that I've been reading recently that has touched me is Tupac's book. I've forgotten the title, but his compilation of poetry. The last one, I was saying that I'm so bad at titles. I don't know what the title is, but I know that it's Viola Davis's book, her autobiography. And I like it because she was basically showing how she went through adversity as well, and she was able to stand on top.